exciting day it is today. I've been waiting for this for so long. So long. These were first mentioned a long while ago on Joe Bongiorno's website. It was mentioned that there were German Ewoks comics that would adapt into German the American Star English comics from Marvel back in the day, with extra stories. So we were told that there are five exclusive to Germany Ewoks comic storylines, little like short stories, kind of similar to what was in the Ewoks annual from the Ewoks UK. And we've been waiting for these for so long. I've been waiting for these for years now. I think I first discovered that they existed in like 2020, 2021. But I've made a couple videos on the channel mentioning that they're coming down the pipeline. I think the first one I made was 2022. We talked about how we had these to look forward to. And they are finally here. These dropped out of nowhere today, this morning. I had no idea these were on the horizon. So this was like a surprise drop from an artist that you like. Just all of a sudden out of nowhere, boom, we've got them. So I've pulled up the PDF here beside me, as you can see on my screen. We'll go ahead and read the introduction that Joe Bongiorno wrote. You can access these on his website. So on his website, there is the archive section. So I will link that below. And you can go ahead on over there and check out these translations. So I'm going to go ahead and read this for us all. The German Ewoks Comics, introduction by Joe Bongiorno. It's a fascinating phenomenon that stories from the Star Wars Expanded Universe continue to be found in all corners of the world, including ones that the majority of English-speaking readers never knew existed. The exclusive stories that appeared in the 2 issues of Die Ewok Comic Taschenbuch and 3 issues of Die Ewok Comic Magazine, known in English as the Ewoks Comic Paperback and the Ewoks Comic Magazine, are among those. And it is only thanks to the tremendous efforts of Thomas Rathowski, who made the English translations, that we can offer them here. There had been a time when we'd hoped to get these properly scanned and reprinted by Marvel in one of their lavish omnibus editions, but as is often the case with older stories from countries outside of the US, no one can find the paperwork. And so we present them directly to you, the fans. The colors and illustrations aren't quite up to par and the layout leaves something to be desired, but at least you can now read and enjoy them. And they are a treat. Whoever the unnamed author was, and it isn't David Manik, who penned the American Ewoks comic book series for the Stars comic from 1985 to 1987, I asked, he or she really knew the material and had watched the show, which was popular with kids in Germany. And as wonderfully zany as the show and comics were, it's a treat to see continuity at work here. Who'd have imagined the return of Prince Pluz? And more significantly, we get additional Morag stories. In the opinion of many, the Tolga Witch Morag was the best villain of the show. But she wasn't around very long before the writers dispensed with her. Here she's mentioned in each of the 5 tales and appears in one. And beyond references, there are new creatures, threats, and lore. And if you've read Supernatural Encounters, you may find several of these referenced there. So until we find more rare EU goodies, enjoy these fun and exciting Ewoks adventures. Anyone who knows me knows I am a huge fan of the Ewoks show. I have watched it numerous times. I think I've done like 7 or 8 entire complete watchers of seasons 1 and 2. I just love the Ewoks show, and I love the Ewoks comics as well. I think I have the omnibus. I don't know. I keep moving my shelves around these days. Oh yeah, right here, down here on this shelf. Got that omnibus. It was the first Dark Horse omnibus I ever got, and I love the Ewok Stars comics by David Manik. So I was so excited when Joe was telling me that like the Lizard Warriors and Prince Pluz and the Underwater Dwellers and stuff like that all come back in these short comics. It adheres to continuity. It means that these one-off concepts and characters that we saw pop up in the comics or the show came back and were important and mattered, which is just so cool. So I'll see if I can zoom on this feature. I don't think I can. So here's the cover for this one. Number 1, it looks like. And here's the translation. An exciting story from the forest moon Endor. The Ewok village is in grave danger is the title. And we have a little illustration. Let's go ahead and read it. We'll jump into this blind. Dulok was Oh, Duloc. I thought that said Duloc. It says dusk. Dusk was falling over the forest moon of Endor. High in the treetops on wooden platforms supported by the mighty trunks lay the village of the Ewoks. Tebow leaned over the wooden parapet and looked down. It does feel safe to live so high up, he said, but a slight shiver ran down his spine when he heard the distant tramp of a Brontomex, a dinosaur-like creature approaching the village. Other sounds became audible, the hissing of a thorn cat, the roar of a swamp lion, all dangerous predators that now under the cover of nightfall went in search of prey. Never in my life, said Tebow, would I like to live down on the forest floor. Not at night, anyway. That was Nisa, the chief's daughter. She had joined Tebow. I wouldn't get a wink of sleep, she added, wincing as she heard the ghastly death cry of an animal. The swamp lion is struck again, said Tebow gloomily. Wow, that's a little bit violent. I love that in older kids' stories we got stuff that was thematic. Nowadays we can't have a character die in a kid's picture book, it seems like. With exceptions here and there, I was really impressed with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which covered some very deep thematic elements in a kid's medium incredibly well. But it's something of the past, kind of grim storytelling, like the Grimm fairy tales, or stuff like The Adventures of Tebow, A Tale of Magic and Suspense. It describes a Duloc's bone shattering and blood spraying on the rocks below. So they used to be able to do darker concepts. So it's cool that that is here as well. I believe Swamp Lion, Brontomex, whatever else there was, Thorncat. Thorncat sounds familiar. Swamp Lion and Brontomex do not, but I could be mistaken. It's been a while since I've been invested in the Ewok side of the lore. So Tebow said gloomily, the little princess snuggled close to him. Terrible, she whispered. Then she asked, have you ever seen one? Tebow shook his head. No, he had only heard the Swamp Lion so far, he explained, adding, I don't have the slightest desire to ever meet him either. It's lucky he can't climb, Nisa looked down into the depths. The forest floor was barely visible. Everything around them was slowly turning black. Are the ladders pulled in too? She asked anxiously. Of course, my child. Chief Chirpa had stepped behind her and put a reassuring hand on his daughter's shoulder. You have nothing to fear. Go to sleep now, Nisa. It's that time. With these words, the chief departed again and shuffled toward his hut. Nisa, however, stayed with Tebow for a while. During the night, she had a terrible dream. She dreamt that the trunks of the large 10,000-year-old trees on which the village of the Ewoks rested were slowly sinking into the depths. The forest floor had turned into a groundless quagmire, into which the trees were sinking, first the feet and then the legs, like a wanderer who had lost his way in the dark moor. No! She woke up from her own scream. She stared into the darkness. It took her endless seconds to realize that it was not real, that she was still in her bed, and in the safe hut, high up in the trees. And not, as in her dream, only a few meters above the ground, in which the tree trunks had sunk, as soft as a spoon in pudding. A spoon in pudding, that's very interesting lore right there. With this comparison, she had to laugh out loud, and now she was wide awake. What's going on? She heard a sleepy voice. Oh no, I've woken up my father, Nisa thought, startled, and hurried to answer to reply, Nothing, I just didn't sleep well. Well, she heard a few more grumbling words, then everything was dead silent again. But Nisa knew that it would be difficult to go back to sleep now. What she had seen in the dream was too terrible. Hovering only a few meters above the ground, she was surrounded by the most gruesome creatures her imagination could conceive. The creatures of the night, which one never got to see during the day, were now all around her. Glowing eyes in the darkness, bleached, frightening dentures, dagger-like fangs, dripping drool. Nisa suddenly began to tremble all over her body. How could she get rid of these nightmarish images? She lit a candle. Light was always good when you were afraid of the dark. Light, and maybe a whistle. A little song? She puckered lips, but then stopped. No, she was not going to wake her father again, just because she had a stupid dream. Suddenly she heard noises from outside. Ksh, ksh. They were soft sounds, really, not so alarming, but it was something she had never heard before in her life. Ksh, ksh. Now she sat upright in bed and listened, and there is an illustration here that shows Xandor rockers, who of course are from I think issue 1 with the Rainbow Bridge of the Ewoks comic series. Next page. She sat completely stiff and rigid. These strange noises frightened her more than she wanted to admit. What should I do? She whispered. Should I wake my father? But she didn't dare. Maybe it really was something harmless, and her father would get mad because she had woken him a second time that night. Tebow, the thought shot through her head. But no, she said to herself, and her face became more and more despondent. If it really was as harmless as chirping crickets, for example, then Tebow will laugh at me. Girls, he will say. Girls are always afraid of everything. So now we've learned Tebow's a sexist. I'm just kidding. And suddenly there was another sound. Someone was moving outside of the platform. Tap, tap. She heard it very clearly. Someone was walking. She swallowed convulsively. Then, in a low, quivering voice, Who? Who is there? Breathlessly she listened. Then came the answer. Psst, it's me, Wicket. A stone fell from Nisa's heart. She quickly got up and scurried outside. It was very dark, but she could see Wicket. Did you also? She began hastily, but Wicket put a finger over her mouth and told her to be very quiet. Yes, he nodded. I heard it too. I just wanted to check before I... He spoke in a very soft voice. Before you what? Whispered Nisa excitedly. She felt a feeling of panic rising up inside her. It was serious. Oh yes, it was very serious. She saw it on Wicket's face too, heard it in his voice. Before I sound the alarm, the young scout said quietly. They both looked over the parapet. Only with great difficulty did Nisa suppress a horrified scream. It was like in her dream, but much worse. The whole forest was full of glowing eyes, fiery dots in pairs that seemed to stick to the tree trunks. And where the dots were, there was also the sound, ksh, ksh. Horror resonated in Wicket's voice. I thought they had long since been eradicated. In the old legends they speak of them. They used to haunt our ancestors. Tree killers. Insects as big as rats. With teeth as sharp as a saw. The worst plague on a people who live in trees. Like us Ewoks. What are they doing? Gasped Nisa, though she already guessed the answer. They're eating the trees, Wicket confirmed. Moments later, the whole village was awake. Everyone was running and shouting in confusion. This illustration is from the comic. I think I recognize it. And it's Wicket, Nisa, and Morag up there. So I'm thinking these illustrations aren't maybe to do with the story that's being told, seemingly so far. We must flee! The trees will collapse! They will bury our huts under them! This is the end of the Ewoks! Help! Help! Silence! That was Chief Chirpa with a commanding voice, trying to stop a spreading panic. He turned to the village medicine man. What do the ancient scriptures say, Logray? The shaman leafed through old yellowed papers, described with strange hieroglyphs that only he could read. After a while he sighed and said, Someone has to go down. He must draw a magic circle around each of the trees that support the Ewoks' village. That will protect them. For these wood-destroying predatory insects are creatures of the witch Morag. Okay, so this is connecting so far. The Xandar Rockers haven't showed up yet, though. Morag! The villagers angrily shouted the name of the hated witch. Chirpa raised his hand. All right, we will find a volunteer. But Logray, what about the trees that are already infested? What good will it do us if a few trees are left standing but the rest die? That is infinitely more difficult to accomplish, Logray explained with a furrowed brow. The key again lies with Morag. These insects, Chief, are simple. They'll eat anything made of wood. He paused slightly, then continued. Even Morag's witch staff. A murmur went through the crowd. It was understood that if the witch's staff no longer existed, her magic would also cease to function. The insects would disappear, because they were Morag's devilry. But, Tebow spoke up, who will go down in the night? Beasts and monsters are on the way. And anyway, where is Morag? To answer the second question, Logray said, she'll be close by. After all, she'll want to watch our trees collapse, and our huts destroyed. The first question can also be answered, said Wicket. I'm going. No, Wicket, said Nisa breathlessly. Let someone else, an older, more experienced warrior go. But Wicket's mind was made up. In admiration, Chief Chirpa and the others watched the young scout lower himself silently down a vine. And Nisa whispered to Tebow, How brave he is. Yes, Tebow said in a strained voice. He was afraid for his friend. He did not think he would see him again. He could still faintly see Wicket drawing the magic circles around the trees as Logray had instructed him to do. Then he disappeared completely in the darkness, and under the dewy, glowing pairs of eyes of the tree-eaters. Suddenly there was a loud crash. The first giant tree collapsed. A groan went through the crowd. Fortunately, it was not one of the trees on which the village was built. But then there was something else to be heard. A barely suppressed, ugly laugh. Morag, said Logray softly. As I suspected. So the witch was nearby, to see the work of her destruction. Rums! The second tree fell, crashing and rumbling. But a moment later, there was total darkness again. The red glow of the countless pairs of eyes had suddenly disappeared. He did it, cheered Tebow. Wicket has done it. He stole the witch's staff and fed it to the predatory insects. Ha ha ha! And here he comes, cried Nisa, who had first caught sight of the young scout reaching for the vine to shimmy up to the safety of the village. He saved us, said Chief Chirpa, almost reverently. And we won't have much to fear from Morag any time soon, Logray grinned. What can she do without her magic staff? And as if to confirm this, the loud shrieks and howls of the wicked witch suddenly rang out from the darkness. No one in the village slept that night. Everyone celebrated the great victory over the witch. Wicket's victory over Morag. Okay, so that story was called The Ewok Village is in Grave Danger. Pretty solid story, honestly. I like it. I'll give it maybe 7 of 10. I think it sets a good bar. How many pages was this? I mean, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7-page short story. Pretty solid, pretty solid. I like it. I like it a lot. Next up is issue number 2 of the Ewoks comic Taschenbuch. And it's called The Ewoks Celebrate the Moon Festival. The horror came in the night, and of all things, when the Ewoks celebrate the Moon Festival. For weeks now, the Ewoks had been living in great anticipation. High up in the treetops of the ancient trees, they prepared everything for the great Moon Festival. But they were in for a nasty surprise. The hut of Chief Chirpa and his daughter, Princess Nisa, was decorated with huge blue and purple leaves that grow only on very rare trees of the forest moon of Endor. From berries, roots, and moon dust, they prepared the most delicious food, at the sight of which everyone's mouth watered. I am so glad that we can celebrate our festival so high up and in safety, Princess Nisa looked up at her father. She was preparing the herbs for Logray's feasting drink. Yes, my child. Swamp lions, thorn cats, and other predators cannot harm us here on the trees, but we must not forget the witch Morag, who keeps putting our tribe in danger. So this is so far a very similar story to the last one, down to thorn cats and swamp lions being mentioned in Morag, but this time it's a moon festival and not Nisa having nightmares at night. I know, but we don't want to let the witch spoil our fun at the moon festival. So far she hasn't disturbed any of the moon festivals, and I don't expect she will this time either. Let's hope you are right, Nisa. The princess finished her work and went to sleep. She was thinking of tomorrow's feast. She wanted to dance only with Wicket and no one else. Ooh, budding romance. The next morning, the long-awaited day dawned. The final preparations were made, and as dusk fell over the moon forest, all the Ewoks went to Chirpa's hut to dine, drink, and take part in the evening's colorful program. But the joyful hearts of the Ewoks would not remain unclouded. While the forest moon of Endor sank into the darkness of night, disaster approached, silently, and unnoticed by anyone. Then we have an illustration of this giant monster in Morag, and I think that's from an issue. I think all of those illustrations are taken from various comics from the Star Comics. The festival had reached its climax. Everyone was having a great time except for Tebow, who stood a bit apart. I'm upset with Wicket for spending the whole night with Nisa. Nisa here, Nisa there. Pah! As if I were nothing. Anyway, the party's over for me. I'm going to sleep. Nobody noticed Tebow's disappearance except for 2 glowing red eyes that followed him attentively through the darkness. Again, red glowing eyes. Interesting, the similarity between these stories. I think I've danced enough for today. Nisa dropped down exhaustedly on a hammock. It was great dancing with you, Nisa. I'll get us some more of Logray's gourmet drink. By the time Wicket returned with the refreshments, Nisa had fallen asleep. Wicket carried her to her camp next door and slept the night on the floor by her soft moss bed. The rest of the Ewoks also gradually drifted off to sleep. When the veil of night lifted from the forest moon of Endor, and the first rays of light fell through the open window, Nisa awoke. Happily, she caught sight of Wicket at her side, who immediately opened his eyes when he felt her gaze. How did you sleep? She asked, ruffling his fur. Oh, like a rock. So deep and sound. So did I. It's a pity I fell asleep so quickly last night. Now the feast is over. Oh, the next feast will be here before you know it. Now let's see what this day brings. Come on, let's go wake up Tebow. I think we neglected him a bit yesterday. Wicket grabbed Nisa by the hand, pulled her up, and together they walked to Tebow's cabin. As they entered, they immediately felt an eerie silence. Instinctively, they grabbed each other and slowly walked forward step by step. They sensed that something was wrong, and Tebow was nowhere to be seen. The only place where he could still be was in bed, which lay behind the curtain. As if hypnotized and guided by a strange power, they walked towards it. Slowly, Wicket pushed the curtain aside with one hand. Nisa cried out. There lay Tebow, gray and lifeless. He's dead, whispered Nisa in a trembling voice. Okay, this is wild so far, this story. This is page 2. I think it's better than the last one, and it's also 5 pages, just like the last story. Wicket touched his friend and felt frightened. Tebow's skin was hard as... "He has turned to stone!" cried Wicket in horror. The news of Tebow's fate spread like wildfire through the huts in the village. In an instant, the Ewoks were on their feet. Everyone came to see the petrified form of Tebow. Chief Chirpa was the first to arrive. "Does anyone know where Paplu and Latara are?" Several ran and found them in their beds, also petrified. Wow, so Paplu and Latara gotten too. More Ewoks were found, also turned to stone in their sleep. Fear and anxiety seized the Ewoks. "Logray, tell us what this means." "Yes, Logray, help us. Is this the end of the Ewoks?" These Ewoks keep getting so concerned that they have to ask if it's the end of the Ewoks, which I find pretty amusing. I'm going to move my camera up here so I can better read the story. But yeah, this is funny. The Ewoks are constantly worried that this is it, that this is the end. It's quite amusing. With these questions, they showered Logray. "Silence!" The wise medicine man spread his arms placatingly. "Calm yourselves. Only then can we think and discuss matters sensibly." One after the other fell silent, and when it was completely quiet, the old shaman spoke in a measured voice. "As you know, the many ancient adventures of the Ewoks are preserved in the stories of our ancestors. One such story tells of the courageous fight of the Ewoks against a treacherous monster. It came at night and touched sleeping Ewoks, and then turned to stone. Only one enemy of the Ewoks could have brought forth such a monster." "The witch Morag!" Wicked jumped up. Angrily, he clenched his fist. "The snarling swamp lion come for her. Why won't she leave us in peace?" Other Ewoks stood up. "What does this beast look like?" Whoa, sorry, my camera's really close to me. Didn't notice. "How can we stop the beast? We must stop it, or we all are lost." That was Chief Chirpa. He'd stepped up beside Logray and put his hand on his shoulder. "According to the story of the stone monster, a witch can summon such a creature only once every 5,000 years, and every time it appears in a different form. That time must be now. Our tribe is in great danger. If we do not stop this terrible being, he will eventually destroy us all. So if we want to find out what kind of creature it is, there's only one way. We need to all stay awake this night. None must fall asleep, for whoever falls asleep is lost." After the insistent words of their chief, the Ewoks left the meeting and went silently into their huts. What followed were probably the worst days and nights of the Ewoks' lives. The fear of the unknown being kept them awake. The first night, nothing happened. The beast did not appear. More nights followed, and it still did not appear. It was as if it had disappeared from the face of the earth. Funny phrase there. The Ewoks were at the edge of their physical strength. The brave little creatures were barely able to keep their eyes open. Oh, it's making me feel so sad for them. "This can't go on," Wicket shouted angrily in front of his hut. "Either the creature has left or it is lying in wait for us to fall asleep so it can strike again." "Calm down, Wicket. Let's go to Logray. Maybe he'll have some advice." Nisa had stepped up behind Wicket and put her hand gently on his. Good wise Logray, he was searching in his ancient medicine book for the special elixir. "Where is it then? Ah, here it is." He pointed his bony finger at a yellowed page. "Here are the herbal ingredients for the wake elixir." "The wake elixir?" Wicket and Nisa looked at him questioningly. "The wake elixir," Logray explained, "keeps the one who drinks it awake for many days without feeling the slightest fatigue. Because of the precious herbs that are needed, it is quite rare, and I can only make it for a single Ewok." Snack break. This is great. I'm enjoying this. Brand new EU. Absolutely loving this. But I've not eaten yet today. And instead of eating, I decided I wanted to record this video because I wanted to take a look at this. So got a little cinnamon roll here. Alright, let's keep going. A meeting was called, and while the Ewoks debated who should take it, Wicket, who was amongst the bravest amongst them, decided for them and drank it. In the evening, after taking Logray's miracle drug, Wicket lay in wait. He felt fresh and rested. His thoughts wandered to Tebow. He mourned for his faithful friend, but also for the clever Latara, for Paplu, and all the others. They lay petrified in their beds still, as nobody could bear it in their hearts to carry them away. He pondered what would happen next. But there! Was that a shadow between the trees near the chief's hut? Suddenly, glowing red eyes stared at him. Wicket got a glimpse of the whole disgusting shape of the beast, and screamed as loud as he could to wake the others. Startled by Wicket's warning cry, the beast fled into the nearby trees. Wicket ran as fast as he could to the chief's hut. Breathless and panting, he stood before Chirpa. "It looks like a horrible flying monster, black with two glowing red eyes. A huge snout and claws with 7 toes. Chirpa thought in a flash. We have to catch it tonight. Go tell Logray we need large quantities of his special glue. I'll tell you everything else then. Logray just has everything. He's like a handyman, basically. I love getting new lore of all this new stuff that Logray has. Chirpa's idea was simple but smart. The Ewoks painted their bed sheets thickly with Logray's special glue and pretended to fall asleep. Then they anxiously awaited what would happen. Wicket hoped that it would come to him. Just wait, you ugly beast. This will be the end of you. Silently, the stone beast came flying, approaching Wicket's open window. Its eyes illuminated Wicket's hut with a glowing light. Wicket closed his eyes. At that very moment, the monster landed on him. Restlessly, it flailed around, smearing glue all over itself. Realizing that it had fallen into a trap, the creature tried to free itself, but its wings were stuck together and its feathers were full of glue. Panicking, it burst its way out of the hut. Trying to fly, it leapt over the edge of the platform, and screeching fell all the way down to the hard ground below, where it died. Wow. Thunder and lightning swept over the forest moon of Endor. The fury of the witch Morag was boundless. But the huts in which the petrified Ewoks rested began to light up as they rose up to new life. Teebo, Latara, and the others ran to Chief Chirpa's hut. With tears of joy in their eyes, Teebo and Wicket embraced each other. Aww. The victory feast which was celebrated that evening was in no way inferior to the moon feast. Yes, it was even much, much more beautiful. The end. Very nice. I like that one even more. The Moon Festival, I give it an 8 of 10 for that second story. So now we move on to the third story. Lizard Warriors, let's go. This is a much shorter story, though, it looks like, which is fine. But it looks to be a much shorter story. An exciting adventure from the forest moon of Endor. It's like 2 pages instead of 5. The Lizard Warriors attack. Grak had incited them. Grak, the renegade, the outcast of the Ewoks, an evil fellow who even made a pact with the witch Morag so he could take revenge on the Ewoks. Now, these come from, let me adjust my camera. Okay. Now, this is all referential to a specific issue of Ewoks. I think it was Ewoks number 7 that had the Lizard Warriors. And so the Lizard Warriors live out in the desert and are, this Ewok Grak was banished by Logray. And they try to capture Wicket and Teebo, but Wicket and Teebo escape back to the village. But we know that they're out there, these Lizard Warriors. And one of the Lizard Warriors kind of turned good at the end, if I recall. So, let's jump in. Wicket, Teebo, and Nissa were on their way to a distant valley when Teebo said to the princess, "You should meet Jodder sometime." Yep, that Jodder's the Lizard Warrior who was turning good, I think. Curious, Nissa asked, "Who is Jodder?" "A Lizard Warrior," Wicket revealed. The young daughter of Chief Chirpa let out a startled yelp. "A Lizard Warrior? By the 3 gods. That's interesting. I'd certainly never expect to meet one of those." She shook herself and frowned at her companions. Teebo patted her reassuringly and said, "Now don't get upset, princess. Jodder's one of the nice ones. We saved his life once." Oh, see the Ewoks issue number 4. That's where it is. "Now he's practically our best friend." "The nicest Lizard Warrior you can imagine," Wicket added. Finally, albeit with some convincing, Nissa agreed to go pay this friend a visit, and they took the path that wound to his home. "And are you certain that we'll be welcome?" Nissa asked. Wicket nodded as they proceeded. "Here's the totem pole already." That was in that issue. I love this. This is referencing right back into that issue, and it was like my favorite issue of the whole run. Oh, this is so great. I've waited so long for this. I've been so hyped for this story. All right. Here's the totem pole already, or whatever that is. Teebo pointed to a tall pole driven into the ground. On top of it was the faded skull of a Bordok, a buffalo-like creature. Nice. 2 other logs crossed with feathers and colorful lobes hanging from them. And at the feet of the strange structure lay skulls. To the left and right of the valley, caves in the rock walls became visible. Wicket frowned. "Odd that he's not here." Nissa stammered, turning pale at the sight of it. Teebo peered into the nearest cave. "Empty," he observed. With mixed feelings, the 3 Ewoks continued on their way. They looked around and all over, but the valley seemed to be deserted. "Maybe they're on a raid," suggested Teebo, but when he saw Nissa's scowl, he quickly corrected himself. "On the hunt, I mean. The Lizard Warriors are meat-eaters and—" A groan made him fall silent. They all stopped as if frozen. "There! There it is again. Nisa pointed with a trembling finger to another cave. There. It seems to be coming from inside. I suggest we get out of here. If someone's moaning, he's probably in distress, Wicket reasoned. I think we should investigate, he said, determined. Or if it's a trap, Tebow said, and the two scouts more cautiously walked into the darkness of the cave. Nisa followed at a distance. Suddenly, Wicket called out, Jodder! The lizard warrior lay bound on the floor. He looked more dead than alive, but then his eyes opened and another groan escaped his armored chest. Finally, he croaked out, breathing heavily. Wicket was already loosening his bonds. After giving him something to drink, they learned his story. Grak, the outcast Ewok who had once stirred the lizard warriors to war and slaughter. Grak, who had been exiled by Jodder after the Ewoks had opened his eyes and taught him what good and evil were. Grak had returned. Ooh, I'm loving this. He returned again to incite my people to war. He promised them meat in abundance to the end of their days if they would help him. Help him what, exactly? Asked Tebow dubiously. To destroy you, the lizard warrior replied in a grim voice. What? Escaped Wicket in horror. You heard me right, Jodder confirmed. He promised them anything they wanted. He made a pact with the witch Morag, and before the surprised Ewoks had even asked, he continued. The witch offered him a great reward if he succeeded in destroying the Ewok race, including a huge palace with an army of demon servants. That vile creature, cried Wicket angrily, clenching his fist. They're both vile creatures, added Tebow angrily. They hate us. Grak because he was cast out when his thirst for conquest did not fit with the Ewoks' love of peace, and the witch because she wants the Sunstar. But so long as Logray is our medicine man, she has no power over us. Enough talk. We must act, interrupted Jodder. I tried but couldn't stop him. He overpowered me. All the lizard warriors are on their way to your village, with ropes and grappling hooks. They'll storm it and... I love the art piece here, by the way. For heaven's sake, what can we do? Cried Nisa. That's funny as well. Here, take this. Jodder had dragged himself into a corner and pulled something out from under some blankets. It was a small vial. He handed it to Wicket. It's the only thing that can save your village. And then he told Wicket exactly how to use it. Hours later, the three Ewoks were back near the village. They could already see the huts and the trees. No lizard warriors were in sight. Then they heard them. It was an ambush. From out of the bushes, lizard warriors with long spears suddenly appeared. And there was Grak. He started shouting, Get them! Don't let them escape! The vial, yelled Wicket. Tebow, the vial! He'd given it to Tebow, who'd kept it in his shoulder bag during the trip back. Still running, Tebow took out the bottle. Open it, quick, gasped Wicket, who took Nisa by the hand and rushed with her to the tree village. The pursuers were only a few yards behind them when Tebow finally opened the bottle. Greenish smoke began to spread out from it in thick billows. Ark, rack, grak! Ghastly screams suddenly sounded behind them, slowly growing quieter. Then the three Ewoks reached their village. Climbing up quickly, they could see from above how the lizard warriors were fleeing in wild flight, pursued by the greenish, odorless, for Ewok noses, smoke. For the lizard warriors, that's the most horrendous stench in the world, Wicket later explained to Chief Chirpa and the entire council of elders. Logray, who was also present, nodded. I've heard of it. Morag herself brewed this concoction ages ago when she tried to rid the lands of their race, he jeered. It's actually harmless, but you can chase the lizard warriors halfway around the moon with it. Later, after she allied with them, she gave them the stuff as a sign of goodwill. Okay, that's very interesting. So Morag doesn't just want to end the Ewok race, but the lizard warrior race as well. Fascinating. She probably wants to end the Flogs, the Duloks, the Guppins, all of them. Just like it was given to us by Jodder now, Wicket added, sighing. I wish there was something like that to drive Grak away down there. He'll rob us of our night's rest with his rantings and curses. I know something, said Nisa, craftily running off. When she returned, it was a bucket of water that she poured over the platform, right on the ranting and raging Grak. Everybody laughed as the old scoundrel disappeared back into the woods, from which he would certainly reappear again one day to take revenge on the Ewoks. That is great. These stories are just getting better and better. I love this one for the continuity. This one's a 9 out of 10. The first one was a 7 of 10. The second one was an 8 of 10. But this is a 9. My favorite by far so far. On to the fourth story. Adventures from the Land of the Ewoks. Trouble for Princess Nisa. Now there was only one more day left. Then, finally, it would be Princess Nisa's birthday. For weeks she had been counting the days. Her father, Chief Chirpa, was glad that the big day was just around the corner. Then the excitement would be over, and peace and calm would return. That's funny. It's another 2-page story. Time is hardly moving at all today. Grumpily, Princess Nisa stepped out of the hut. She saw her best friend Latara coming out of her own hut with a basket over her arm. Latara, wait! Nisa ran toward her. Where are you going? I just want to pick some berries for dessert. I'll come along. It's so boring today, cried the princess. Latara and Nisa descended into the forest of Endor. Actually, I'm always a little afraid of the forest. It often seems so dark and mysterious, and low-grade stories about dangerous moose cats and predatory martens don't help. Interesting. Moose cats. Fascinating. I love all this lore. This is great stuff. I prefer not to think about them. They send a shiver down my spine. Nisa moved in closer to Latara. We don't have to go far. I know a place near where quite a lot of berries grow. Latara tried to make her voice sound firm without any trace of fear, but she didn't quite succeed. Over there, look, there it is already. Quickly they ran toward the berry field, and in no time the basket was filled. That's when Nisa spotted a strange kind of berry. I'll have to try those. You too. But no sooner had she put some of the fruit in her mouth than she sank unconscious. All of Latara's attempts to bring Nisa back to consciousness were in vain. Latara had to get help. The little Ewok girl ran back to the village as fast as she had ever run in her whole life. Completely out of breath and barely able to speak, she reported what had happened. Chief Chirpa gathered some Ewok warriors and Logray the medicine man left immediately. Latara showed them the way. They should have seen the princess from afar, but even when they got closer, they could not see Nisa anywhere. Alarmingly, Nisa had vanished without a trace. Logray found some of the berries and immediately recognized the stupefying fruit, knowing the effects of it wore off after a short time. But as the dusk fell over the forest moon of Endor, the Ewoks returned to the village exhausted from the unsuccessful search, no longer believing that Nisa had woken up and wandered the forest while Latara had gone for help. Wicket's voice interrupted the silence. There's only one possibility. Nisa has fallen into the hands of the Duloks. There is hope that we might free her, but if one of the predators or even the witch Morag found her... A murmur went through the crowd, and the Ewoks were bristled at the implication of Wicket's words. We must find out if the lazy, conniving Duloks have taken Nisa. Chief Chirpa had barely finished the sentence when Tebow came running, all out of breath. I found this under the thick berry brush. The Ewok stared at the object in his hand. It was the collar of a Dulok warrior. Chief Chirpa immediately assembled a group of experienced and brave Ewok warriors to leave the next day for the Dulok's distant village. I'm going too. Wicket's voice sounded determined and firm. Oh no, my little friend, you stay here and watch over the village, Chief Chirpa ordered. Astonishingly, Wicket complied without protest. Wow, that is astonishing. At sunrise, the Ewoks gathered at the meeting place. Chirpa, the wise old Logray, and the other brave Ewoks all knew what dangers lay before them. In the first part of the journey, they would fly their gliders. Because of the danger of being spotted by Duloks, they would walk the rest of the way. Interesting. This would lead them past the dreaded Bog Temple, where the witch Morag sometimes dwelt. After the Ewoks hid their gliders, the far more dangerous part of the journey began. Logray had read in his old spellbook that if you rubbed the soles of your feet with a special herbal tincture, I think that says, you could avoid being seen by witches. He had had troubles finding these rare herbs, but he distributed them now. Whether they really worked or no one could say, but everyone hoped with all their hearts. Everyone's muscles tensed, and without saying a word, they crept one after the other along the narrow path by the bog pond. On the left side, thorny bushes grew. On the right side, the bog pond shimmered in the pale light. They could not see much. They each oriented himself by the bright soles of their feet in front of them, because the herbal tincture had caused them to glow a little. Chief Chirpa had taken the lead. Tensely, he followed every sound and every movement. What was that? A shadow. It scurried toward them. What should they do? Was it the witch? Thoughts flashed through Chirpa's head like lightning. Sorry for this stilted reading. My eyes are having a hard time reading the text so small on the screen. No, this voice he now heard he knew, and knew all too well. Stop moving. It's me, Wicket. Wicket, what are you doing here? Chief Chirpa's voice sounded angry and relieved at the same time. I followed you in secret. I intend to be there to save Nisa. Chirpa had no choice. He couldn't send Wicket back alone, knowing how great the danger was. Once the bog pool was behind them, they breathed a sigh of relief. Had Logray's tincture, I don't know what that word is, worked? Or had the witch not been in her temple? The village of the Duloks was not far now. It looked similar to the village of the Ewoks, built as it was on a platform, only theirs was much shabbier and less stable. The Duloks were celebrating a festival, which could be heard from far away. Thus they had no trouble sneaking up unseen. But what they saw then made them freeze in shock. The Dulux had locked Nisa in a cage. There she sat huddled and forced to listen to what these ugly creatures shouted while dancing around the cage. Foremost among them, King Gornish danced. "We have captured the princess." The rest of the Dulux shouted it after him in chorus. "We will never give her back again." I love King Gornish. He's awesome. "The Ewoks will now do what we want. We'll no longer be seen as the stupid, lazy Dulux. Now we are seen as cunning Dulux." So they moved around the cage chanting. In the hand of each they held a drinking bowl, from which they moistened their dry throats again and again. It was a frightening sight, the little Princess Nisa in the midst of these hideous creatures. Deeply concerned, the Ewoks crept up close to another to confer. "What shall we do? The Dulux outnumber us. We can't possibly fight them," Wicket said in despair. Chief Chirpa nodded his chin thoughtfully. "I have a suggestion." Logri stood up and looked around. "Let us outwit the Dulux." "Yes, but how?" Chief Chirpa looked at him questioningly. "We'll turn their feast drink into a sleep drink. Then when they've all passed out, we'll free Nisa." The Ewoks were delighted with Logre's suggestion. Quickly the old shaman gathered the necessary ingredients and mixed them together. The trough with the festive drinks stood a little apart under an ancient Kila tree. There was one way to reach it, and that offered a little protection. Only a small figure had a chance of not being seen. The choice fell on Wicket. Makes sense, as he was the smallest. Wicket slipped nimbly through the low undergrowth. In no time he was at the trough. Just as he was about to put the herbs in, a Dulux approached. Quick as a flash, he hid behind the large jar. The Dulux filled his bowl and went back to the others. Now Wicket was left undisturbed. From a safe distance, the Ewoks watched, as one by one the Dulux fell asleep, leaving no one to keep watch on Nisa. When finally they were all out, they crept up to the cage, opened it, and Chirpa quietly took his daughter in his arms and carried her out of the Dulux village. Only when they were a safe distance away did they cheer with joy. Logre quickly brushed the soles of Nisa's feet, because the way back led past the bog pond again. He was not sure, however, if it was necessary, because Chirpa carried his daughter in his arms all the time until they came to the place where they had hidden the gliders. Here they could really breathe a sigh of relief. The next day the joy was double for all Ewoks. Nisa had been rescued, and it was her birthday. "Where is Nisa?" Chirpa had not seen his daughter since breakfast. Wicket picked her up earlier. "I think he has a surprise for her." Tebow stepped beside Chirpa with a grin and pointed to the clearing. That's when Wicket and Nisa came riding up. High on the back of an elephant, they moved leisurely toward Tebow and Chirpa, who couldn't close his mouth in amazement. Nisa was beaming all over, and it was obvious it was the happiest day of her life. Fun story. Fun story. I like it. I like it. Probably a 7 to 8 out of 10. I'll give it a 7. I like it. I like it a lot. Fun stories. Fun stories. This is just great to have new EU. Man, I wish days like this could happen more and more. But, yeah, news stories. So happy. Makes me so happy. Alright. The latest from the Forest Moon of Endor is Prince Plu's returning. This is going to be really interesting. This is from the Ewoks Droids crossover. "Remember when we were looking for the prince and no one knew where he was?" Chief Chirpa asked, looking around with a grin. The other Ewoks laughed. They remembered only too well how the little prince looked out of the honey pot, all smeared and sticky. "I wonder if we'll ever see him again." It was evening, and Nisa and Wicket looked up at the starry sky. Secretly, they both wished. If only Prince Plus came back. They'd found the Star Child sweet and funny. Unfortunately, they never had the chance to play with him, to romp in the woods, to show him the wonderful secrets of Endor. Everything had happened so quickly. The betrayal of the Dulux, the hurried departure from the droids back into space. "There!" Nisa pointed excitedly to the sky. Among the myriad flickering points of stars, something was tracing a long golden path. "I know what you're thinking," said Wicket, "but that can't be Prince Plus returning in a starship. Sure, the first time it looked like fire falling from the sky in a blinding glow, but this," Wicket pointed to the golden, somewhat fiery orb coming closer and closer to the surface of Endor's moon. "This is just a shooting star. A pretty big one, though," he muttered, and then added questioningly, "Maybe a meteor?" "Nonsense!" exclaimed Nisa, incensed. "That was a spaceship." She grabbed Wicket's arm. "Come along, Wicket. We are going to find out." "In the middle of the night?" The young Ewok shook his head. He stared in the direction where the glow had gone out. Either there was now the impact crater of a chunk of rock that had chosen their world, of all places, as its landing site after traveling across the universe for countless years, or Chief Chirpa and some other Ewoks had then joined them. "Father," exclaimed Nisa, "did you see that too? Could it not be that—" "Anything is possible," the chief of the Ewoks interrupted her. "But it doesn't have to be Prince Plus. If it is indeed a starship, then it could be other space travelers, beings from alien worlds that may be hostile to us." Chief Chirpa's pretty smart. He rubbed his chin in thought. Then he decided, "It's too dangerous to go out there at night, but tomorrow at daybreak we'll go out and explore." I've memorized the spot. Now go to bed, children. It's very late. He yawned, turned over, and disappeared into his hut. Nisa spent a restless night. She kept thinking that out there, somewhere in the woods of Endor, the spaceship carrying Prince Pluz had landed, and that perhaps the little prince had come all alone this time. She imagined how he might be wandering through the dark forest, looking for the village of the Ewoks where lived his two friends Wicket and Nisa. Again and again she was startled in her restless slumber. In her dream she imagined how the Duloks insidiously followed the prince, like a pack of boras following their prey, or how a swamp lion, there it is again, lurked behind a bush to pounce on the helpless little Pluz. No, she cried at one point. No, father, we must help him. She was awakened by her own cry. Restlessly she tossed and turned in her bed. It was a long night that would not end. At last the hour of dawn came. The first rays of the sun were already falling through the thick leafy canopy of the trees when Wicket came into Nisa's hut. Wake up, princess, he called. Everyone is already gathered outside. We're just waiting for you. Nisa came up sleepily and rubbed her eyes. At last she had fallen asleep after all, and now she was terribly tired. Let's see if Prince Pluz has come. Thibaut's funny face peered in through the open door. Of course, the prince. With a jerk, Nisa straightened up. A few moments later she was outside with the others. Let's get moving, she cried hastily, and the Ewoks laughed. Child, we would have gone long ago if you had not overslept, said Chief Chirpa, stroking his daughter's head. They descended, the helical ladder that wound around the trunk in several arcs, waiting until the last one reached the forest floor. Then the troop of Ewoks started moving. Chief Chirpa indicated the direction with his arm and marched ahead. He had a very good sense of direction, and those who followed him knew that he could rely on it. He would lead them to the spot where the unidentified object had landed that evening, or crashed. No one could know. Besides, it doesn't have to be a spaceship, said old Lawgray, who hadn't minded coming along. As Wicket said, it could be a meteorite, or... Abruptly they stopped. Chirpa put his finger to his mouth and told them all to be silent. Strained, they listened. There were noises in the undergrowth. Something was approaching them. What could it be? A harmless animal that rummaged through the bushes in search of food? Or even a beast that wanted to strike prey? Maybe there were even some Duloks prowling around. In any case, it was better to be prepared. For anything. Some Ewok warriors already held their spears in their hands, ready to throw them. A figure emerged from the thicket. It was tall, massive, with two small horns on its head, and two large pointed teeth. The creature was greenish in color. As green as... Prince Pluz, cried Nisa suddenly. She had spotted her little friend first, who now appeared behind the big green stranger. Ewoks, Ewoks, cheered the prince, running into Nisa's outstretched arms. So these are your friends, said the stranger in a deep but friendly voice. The Ewoks stared at him, some fearful, others determined to strike back at once if attacked. Now Wicket understood. Put down your arms, he ordered the Ewok warriors, who lowered their weapons in amusement. This here is Prince Pluz with his father, I presume? That's right, I'm the little one's father. King Gokus, the ruler of Alzar, introduced himself. He shook hands with everyone. How wrong appearances can be, Nisa whispered, alluding to the king's fearsome countenance. I think I like him. Prince Pluz, meanwhile, was dancing around Logray and screeching, Honey, honey! That's what he wanted for his birthday. To get nibble from the honey pots of the Ewoks on Endor. That's why we came, declared King Gokus, laughing boisterously. And the other Ewoks joined in his laughter, relieved, while Nisa winked at Wicket and said, I told you that was no shooting star. Our star child has returned. That's really fun. Really fun yet again. Great story. I give that one an 8 of 10. It's so great that Prince Pluz got to return to Endor. Very, very cool. What I like a lot about this story, too, is that King Gokus gets to come to it. And we get the planet Alzar mentioned again. I always thought it was time travel, how the droids got to Endor, but this kind of implies it isn't time travel and that it's perhaps concurrent with the current time on Endor. So that's interesting to note. One thing that struck me as I'm reading all these stories is the Ewoks seem quite young here, so I'm very interested about the timeline placement that was given on StarWarsTimeline.net. So let me pull that up here. Okay. And here's the PDF on Joe's website. I don't know if he has it already, but it's on this archives page, rare 5 issues of exclusive Ewok comics produced in Germany in the late 1980s. Special thanks to Thomas Ruthalski for the English translations. Very, very good. Very, very cool. And in the latest news, I think he mentioned that these were going up. Yep. We are the Ewoks, and we're now a bigger family. That's right, the English translations of the German Ewoks comics are now available. Awesome. But do they have timeline placement yet? I don't know. So let me go to Complete Saga, and I'll Command F search for Ewoks. Okay, now the Ewoks save the trees. Go through this. Okay, droids and Ewoks. Okay, do they have? Does he have them up and listed yet? Because I'm curious about timeline placement. Um, Because this is the issue with the Lizard Warriors, so presumably it follows it. But I'm not seeing them up here yet. I'm sure they'll be up here eventually, but I'm not seeing them yet. Oh wait, yes, here they are. This is where he's put them. Okay. So here's Ewoks 1, the annual from the UK, but here's the ones we just read. Great concern for Princess Nisa. Is Prince Blue's returning? Okay, interesting. I want to know the logic to why those are there and why the My Comics precede them. Fascinating. Then this one, the Ewok Village is in grave danger. And the Ewoks celebrate the Moon Festival. So where is the one with the Lizard Warriors, or did we already see it? Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Was the Lizard Warriors one up here already? Yes, okay. He did put that up here. Okay, cool. Cool. The Lizard Warriors attack. Awesome. So those are all their timeline placements as well. So very happy that we got new EU today. It's awesome. Awesome day when we can get new EU. These did not disappoint. They lived up to expectation. I was hoping that these were going to be great. Wow, sorry for my camera in this video. It's been wild. Oh my goodness. But I was just so excited that I had to record this as quickly as possible because I had to talk about these because I just wanted to take a look at them live with you guys. I just wanted to look at them, read them, digest them with y'all. I couldn't wait any longer to do that. So these did not disappoint. They had all the continuity I was hoping they would have. They were just wonderful. Man, new EU. So good. I've been waiting for these for a while, like I said at the beginning. I have been promoting that these are coming out soon for years now. And it feels kind of surreal that they're up already. But man, they're awesome. I think they're better than the My Comics, the Spanish Ewoks comics. They're more like short stories, which means they have a lot of substance to them. I really enjoyed them. What do you guys think of these? The link will be below so you guys can go read them yourself. Brand new EU. Always a good day.